Hi, everybody. Today, we're joined by Cynthia Santiago, an experienced immigration attorney based in Southern California and a dedicated advocate for immigrant rights. Her legal work focuses on deportation defense, adjustment of status, and family petitions. Through her practice, she empowers undocumented and Latino communities with accurate information and a strong legal representation. Cynthia is also active on social media where she educates the public about their rights and important immigration policy updates. In this interview, we will discuss what to do if you are approached or detained by ICE, how recent policy changes may affect your case, and why legal support is important now more than ever. Let's welcome Cynthia Santiago.
Hi, thank you for having me, Alejandra. It's just a great opportunity to continue to empower our community. Unfortunate circumstances, but we are all using our platforms and our ability to help so many families that I just really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we are all doing our very best given these ugly circumstances. So, the community has a few questions. The community has been very anxious, and I feel like some of these questions will help with that and debunk maybe even some myths. So, we'll go ahead and get started. The first one, Abogada, is what has changed under the current administration for people who have court dates? And what do you recommend that they do now given these changes?
Under this administration, starting on the first day, a lot of executive actions were signed. Executive actions that, for example, ordered for nationwide expedited removal hearings. So, nationwide, people who are in the US found to be here less than 2 years are subject to being deported immediately without hearings. And so, we saw a series of executive actions signed. We also saw a policy that changed with applications. We're also seeing now a trend of reopening cases that had been previously under administrative closure. They were sleeping for 10 years and now they're being reopened to be put back into court proceedings. So, what is happening to those in court is that the government attorney is known as DHS. They are filing motions to dismiss the charges of being in the country without permission so that then the person who is facing the immigration case is no longer has a case pending, is no longer in status if they had applied for asylum and they were waiting for a final date. And so this person is now vulnerable. And when the person is leaving court based on their expedited removal policy and their ICE enforcement and working together with DHS and ICE, they now have officers outside of court who know beforehand who's going to have this order given and they detain the person. That's the most horrific and impacting thing to people who are trying to do their process the right way. They're going to court, they're trying to fight their deportation case, and they're confronted with an ICE officer who's now detaining them, taking them to custody. What we're recommending for people to do is to speak to an attorney, speak to a nonprofit, try to file motions to appear telephonically, to appear via WebEx, to have an attorney request to your presence be waived. Just doing as many efforts for a motion to be filed for the judge to be able to waive your appearance in court or not have to go in person and do it virtually. But if that isn't the case and you do have to appear, we also recommend you have an attorney or an advocate with you in court. Now, we are very, very cautious that people are being put in a very hard position to go and potentially be at risk to being detained and having your case dismissed, or to not go. And if you don't go, then the consequence is severe. It's a deportation in your absence. And that is only excused with good cause. And there's very, very limited circumstances that you can argue for good cause. And so it's a very case by case situation. We ask people to talk to attorneys or nonprofits to try to get their best advice, what would be most significant in their case and how they can protect themselves. If they are detained, then what would be the next plan? Would they be eligible for bond? Would they be eligible to fight their case while detained? So things like that are really important that an attorney can assess, or a nonprofit.
To summarize, if somebody does have a court appointment, you recommend that they still go to their appointment even though ICE is out there.
And they should get an assessment and know where they stand and the risk factors. But if you don't go, it will be a deportation order. So it's a very, very difficult position to put families in, but unfortunately that's what it is. If you don't go to court, you end up with a deportation order.
And to request to change it virtually, that is done with assistance of an immigration attorney.
An immigration attorney, or I've been seeing a pop-up of a lot of legal clinics that are popping up. And so sometimes just try to tie into the resources and as a collective just share if there's a session for people to be able to get pro bono assistance on those motions.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the situation where ICE is detaining people without identifying themselves and they're not even presenting a warrant? Is that legal?
Yes. So what happens with our constitutional rights is that if we are in our home, it is constitutionally the most protected place to be. Our home is our sanctuary. And so the Constitution says like you have to have a warrant to go into a home, or there's some exceptions. But once a person, for example, in their home opens the door slightly, the officers can construe or say that the person gave them consent to enter. That's why it's really important. If you don't know who's at the door, don't open the door. Try to do a community chat or a network with your neighbors so that if there's somebody at your door, they can alert you, or you can ask your neighbors to check to see who's in front of your house. So the home is the most protective ground. Then a person that has to be in a vulnerable position, like in public, going to work, going to the store, that situation is now we're looking at things like reasonable suspicion and probable cause. And so if an ICE officer stops a person under reasonable suspicion that they're in the country undocumented, then that person should exercise their right to remain silent, because you don't have to give information if it will incriminate you. Now, if the officer finds indication that the person's from another country, the person says, yes, I'm from another country, I don't have status, they find documentation from the other country, like a matricula, identification document, then that could give the officer the next layer that they need, the next level, which is probable cause. And then they would arrest the person under that basis that the person is in the country without status. And that is sufficient for an arrest. So what is super important right now for our community is that if you have status and you see something like this happen, you step up and you take videos of them. Park your car, go over there, stay a reasonable distance, take video, and ask the officer, why are you detaining this person? Under what reason? Recommend the person staying silent. But if the person isn't giving the information and the officer can't get to that next level of being able to arrest a person, they're going to have to let them go. And if you're recording it and they still take the person, that information is useful for the attorneys to file motions against an illegal stop.
Thank you. Okay, that's new information for me. So, if someone is detained by ICE, what rights do they have?
Right. So generally what we're seeing is that if they do arrest you and take you into custody, then we're seeing a lot of transfers. They're transferring families to different locations. So it would take, around 2 to 3 days to even hear from your family. The person has the right to remain silent and not answer their questions. Typically they have a right to ask to see the judge, to ask for an attorney, or to be able to speak to an attorney. These are not attorneys that are provided by immigration. Your family does have to find an attorney, but you have the right to be represented by somebody that is an attorney. And then we're asking folks to just make sure that it's like, don't sign anything that you don't understand. So speak to an attorney first and then make your assessment if you want to sign something like a voluntary deportation. However, there's also individuals that have an immigration history, criminal history. Individuals need to have an assessment by an attorney to know if they're going to qualify for bond, to know what kind of immigration packet they could submit to try to detain them from being deported, to try to stop a deportation process. There's individuals that maybe have had a deportation previously, and it could be that the person could be deported within hours if they're from Mexico, for example. And so it's important to get an assessment beforehand, but also if that's not possible and they're already detained, then to wait till you can have your family member have an attorney go visit you, or a nonprofit go visit you and speak to those attorneys, so that you fully understand what rights you're going to give up or what you can fight for in court and what to expect.
And if they don't have a lawyer, they have to wait until their hearing to request for a lawyer, or can their family look for a lawyer in the meantime while they're detained before their first hearing?
Yeah, so normally, they once you're booked in and they give you your charges, then they'll assign a court date. And so normally at your first court date, if you have not had an attorney in time for that court date, can ask for an extension, for a continuance, so that they can find an attorney or representation. However, this is also very limited to the judges. It could be that they can give a few days or they can give weeks. Normally, that is the process, although we're living in times where a lot of things are out of the normal process. But the right to have counsel is one of the rights that individuals have with status or no status. And so seeking a continuance to have an attorney is generally okay. Um, we do ask families to don't wait till the last minute either, but attorneys have to be prepared. That's why it's also important to have a consultation beforehand if you're in a vulnerable position, or that you're a person that just goes out in public that has no status, because at least an attorney will already have your background info and will have a plan in place. So if you're detained and your family hires that attorney, they're going to know what they're going to be able to file beforehand. It's been taking attorneys days to find their clients, and days and hours to get into the visits. And so it's important to have a plan beforehand. If that's not possible, then you have to work with urgency. You have to work really fast to try to find a reputable and trusted attorney. Be careful with, any type of pressure, though, from attorneys saying that you have to hire them now on the spot. You have the right to talk to different attorneys, feel out which one is the most experienced and fit for your family, and then you can hire that person. But if you're feeling the pressure to hire somebody, it's best to just step back and to think about it more closely.
That's a great tip. Now, last question here from the community. If somebody is undocumented, do you still recommend that they reach out to an immigration attorney to work on their immigration status under this administration?
Yeah, so this wave, this administration, this time we're in is all about prevention. And it's not going to prevent a person from being detained on the street or at work or whatnot, but it's prevention in knowing your rights. And so knowing what to do in the worst case scenario. And going forward with the process is also important. If you qualify for something, let's get to the process sooner than to keep waiting for things to get more difficult. Recently, there was announcements about if your case is denied, if your case for residencia or for residency or for some type of an asylum is denied, it gets referred to the court. It gets referred to charges with the judge and deportation judge. So it's important to have an attorney assess your case, to tell you what the risks are. And if you can hire them to represent you, then that's even better. But if you qualify for something, we don't have a lot of time to just wait as well. And not to put the pressure, but it's just that things keep looking more and more intense with applications. Previously, we used to do residency applications and not have an interview. Now we're back in interview mode, and every case has to have an interview for residency. So it's just going to continue to put pressure on us. And so it's important to try to do your process and get to it.
Thank you. Where can people find more information about you and the services that you offer? Are they exclusive to California only?
So I am immigration attorney all over the U.S., so nationally. But there's certain cases where if there's not an interview, not a hearing, then I handle cases out of state. The U visa process in particular, victims of crimes, is a lot of cases I handle, and so it's important to have someone that has experience. And so I take on cases in different states for clients in different states for those processes. It's also very important if you have like a case where someone's being detained or they're facing an immigration judge for deportation, that you try to hire an attorney that's local. So I only take on many of those cases that are within the California area, because you have to go in person to visit your client. You have to go in person for many of the hearings. You have to show the documents to your clients. And so it's important to have someone that's accessible, so that they can be involved in your case and be present with you during every step of the way.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring up the website where you can check out Abogada Cynthia Santiago.
Sorry, I
Thank
didn't
you.
say that. Abogada Santiago, Abogada on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, and my website. But we're trying our best to get as much information out here, and that's why I'm very grateful for this kind of opportunity, because it's back to back all day on the phones and talking to different families and resources. And so, what we try to do is, if my office can't help you with representation, then we send you to someone who knows what they're doing and is the best fit. Right now, I'm currently looking for attorneys in Texas that I know through my networks and trying to get confirmation on who can help with families. And so it's important right now that as a community we come together and we provide the resources to each other.
Absolutely. And which is why we're so grateful for your time here. Thank you so much. And also for all the work that you're doing. Please follow Abogada Cynthia, because I just keep telling her how impressed I am. She's all over Southern California, maybe even a little bit beyond that. And it's just beautiful to see her helping the families and providing accurate information online as well, so that people don't fall into scams. So again, thank you. Check out the show notes. I'm going to have her information there. And then we also are collecting a list of recommended immigration attorneys, also in the nonprofit sector, nonprofit organizations across the nation. We're trying to do the state by state.